All right, there he is, locked and loaded and ready to go. How you feeling, my man? You feeling good?
I'm feeling great. I want to get the homage shirt in the background there, just in case y'all haven't seen that up here. The NFL Jam with Tua and Tyreek
Oh, on the right side there, yes.
on there, just in case I want to tilt it up to see. But nah, man, doing all right. Still a slow period, but only this time next week we will have had a full OTA practice to dissect and discuss. So just got to be patient.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I got no problem. Plus the Heat and the Panthers are keeping us entertained, bro. We got two teams in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I'm sure you saw some of it last night. And one of the interesting things that I think Dolphin fans need, for many years, I grew up with Shula. And obviously, I'm a kid from the 70s, and I watched the Dolphins from the 70s through the 80s and the 90s with Shula. And there was a culture in place, Marcel.
Mm-hmm.
And he won with different kinds of teams. The teams from the 70s, the Woodstock team that went to the Super Bowl with Dan Marino. He adjusted to the talent that he had. And they had a lot of success over several decades. They were the winningest franchise in those days. In comes Pat Riley in the 90s as Mickey Harrison trades for Pat Riley. And he instilled a culture from day one that still exists to this day, a quarter century later, a lot like Shula did for a quarter century plus. And it's a winning culture. Players come in, they're better because of it, just like Shula, right? So there's something to it, like Popovich did in San Antonio, like Belichick and Brady established for a while with New England, and other franchises have done it over the years. Do you see it's too early to say there is? I get it. But do you see any semblance of it with the Miami Dolphins, with Mike McDaniel, the way he's doing things after year one? What can you say about that you might see some kind of a culture being instilled?
I think it's too early to say anything definitive, or especially not to compare it to something like the Heat, which, along with, like you said, the Patriots organization probably has one of the most distinguishable cultures. Heat culture, Patriots culture. Like, exactly, if you're into the game, like, exactly what that's talking about. The Heat, you're going to come in here, you're going to bust your ass, you're going to work harder than you've ever worked. You're going to be in the best shape of your life. You have to be borderline psychotic to play for the Miami Heat. You get I say that as a compliment.
Yeah, you got to really want to win. Yeah, they want people. Listen, you talk to a lot of football people. What's that key characteristic they love? He loves football. When they know that their player loves football, they fall in love with that guy right away. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that. In the Heat, you better love basketball.
Love that and love the work. I think more often, more importantly than loving basketball, you have to love to work.
Well, but my brother, that goes with everything that you're great at. It takes work.
It
Doesn't matter what it is. To be a writer,
people,
to be a reporter, to be an insider, to be whatever. I don't give a shit what it is. An insurance agent. You better work your ass off if you're going to be a great insurance agent.
Yeah, and I'm not discounting the players who, I'm not discounting guys like Shaq, for example. I'm not saying Shaq didn't work hard. But Shaq came here and had an absolute culture shock because at 7'1", 360 pounds, with the athleticism of like Anthony Davis, he didn't really have to work that hard. He said, "I'm gonna be Shaq no matter where I go." So when they come here and Pat Riley says, "No, you're gonna get your ass in shape."
No, the first year he got Shaq in shape. The first year.
That's what I'm saying. So like when you come in here and Pat Riley's like, "No, your ass gonna work here."
Yeah,
like it's a shock. I don't know if I see that yet in Miami, because right now it's still a little bit of a powder keg, and like, stay with me here, it's a little bit of a powder keg because there are so many personalities, so many big names, so many egos in that locker room. I'm not saying that they can't coexist. I'm saying we have seen precedent of superstar filled locker rooms, especially almost exclusively in the NFL, deteriorating when shit gets hard. I look really smack at that. You remember the Eagles back in like 2011, 2012?
Mm-hmm.
They added Nnamdi Asomugha, a couple other guys, and they're the super team.
I remember, right? Yeah.
It didn't work. It doesn't work. So it's hard to do, especially when, like I said, it hits the fan. I think last year was a great indication that they're in the right direction because they lost 5 games in a row in the most critical month of the season. And I didn't see any difference in that locker room. I didn't see any hanging in the heads. I didn't see attitudes flare up. Didn't see people quit on the field. So I think McDaniel has that respect from guys that they know, okay, if we lose, like it's something that we're just going to figure out. So I am. They've only added more personalities to that with Jalen Ramsey. I'm not saying it's going to break the locker room. I'm saying they're still at this critical juncture where we need to see, okay, this can work, over long periods of time. But 1 year, I don't think it's long enough to establish a culture like the Miami Heat have, like New England Patriots have. But you know what helps that? Winning the Super Bowl, winning a championship.
Yeah.
When you win a championship, then people say, you know what? Whatever the hell you just did, let's make sure we do that again next year and the year after and the year after. That is a thing. Like I said, I've mentioned the Patriots and Heat culture a lot as the two shining examples of teams that have a identifiable culture. Another thing they have in common is multiple freaking championships. Multiple championships. Otherwise, like I don't know what other organization really has that like that quantifiable feel to it, like that culture about them where you can say, oh yeah, like that's an identifier. Like I think the Heat and Patriots stand out. I'm not ready to put the Dolphins in there yet.
No,
because Daniel's only been here for a year.
Right.
He's off. I think he's off to a good start. He's off to a good enough start.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted, and that's what I was kind of leading to, because I thought the playoff game was a nice indicator for a first year coach that you had all those injuries and you could have easily mailed it in and said, "Shit, dude, we got to the playoffs. We did more than enough, and we're going up against the Bills," and they left it all out there on the field with a third string quarterback. And to me, that shows me that there's a connection with the players and the coach right away, where we've seen other teams kind of tune out their coach right away because they didn't buy. Like Cam Cameron was, bro, in his first year, he was like he lost that locker room with a quickness, and so that was one of those indicators that maybe McDaniel is doing things the right way. We'll see. Obviously, time will answer all, but one thing I can say, and I think you might agree with that, with this, he is one of those coaches that might be wired the right way to communicate with today's player.
Yeah, I've hit on this a couple times. There's a shift in athlete, just like there's a shift in just a generational shift in the average person. Guys in this generation, it's no longer like the 50s, 60s, 70s born guys that say, all right, when you tell me jump, I say how high. Like, I'm not calling these guys insubordinate, but like these guys need to know that you care about them. Like they need to know that you value them, that you will ride for them, and then they will ride for you. They need to know the why just about as much as the what. And I think that McDaniel does a good job of providing the why. Now, granted, like I will say, this might be controversial, the team didn't necessarily quit on Brian Flores either last year, like a couple years ago.
No.
So like he did something. Like it's not like there's a system in place of players quitting on coaches or poor leadership.
No. Flo's problem was all offense. Flo's problem was communication, and he just couldn't build an offensive staff. That was his real downfall.
He had maxed out what he could do on offense after that. Like there was no, like I said, that firing always made sense if for no other reason than who the hell is going to come over here to coach the offense?
Right. And that's where McDaniel passed the test. That's where McDaniel passed the test this offseason over Flo, where Flo had 3 years to fix the offense, and all he could do is keep changing offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches and offensive line coaches. Whereas this guy came in the first year, obviously he knows offense, and then he needed to fix the defense, and he went and got Vic Fangio. So then he proved that he can build more of a complete staff than Flo. And that's something that he showed that Flo could not do right away, which culturally, by the way, that's very important because as you have success, Marcel, you know this, and I think everybody else will figure this out also. Every coach that has success loses players, loses executives, and loses assistant coaches because everybody's going to steal pieces from your success because they want to have a slice of that success. So you better be good at not just building one staff, because that's what I talked about with Flo. He can't build a complete staff. Well, guess what? Great coaches have to continue to build great staffs year in and year out, because you're going to lose somebody in your training staff. You're going to lose an executive. You're going to lose your top college scouting director because he's going to become a general manager or assistant general manager. He's going to get a promotion in another team. And then now you've got to go replace all those kind of pieces. That's kind of part of being that CEO, that head coach. And I think that's one thing culturally that McDaniel might be showing you in the future, that he can develop a staff on both.
And it's such an interesting, that's such a critical next step. I've covered 2 organizations that are in those days of like they've seen their staff leave, and now we're having to see them, figure it out from there. One obviously is the Bills. They lose Brian Dable, they lose Joe Shane in the front office, a couple other auxiliary guys on the coaching staff. The offense wasn't exactly the same. You pay attention to guys up in Buffalo, they're complaining and bitching and moaning all year long. Like it wasn't quite the same. And then at Clemson, what made Clemson great during that run was not because Dabo Swinney is such an executive football mind, an exemplary football mind. It's because he was a good CEO. He's a good motivator. He obviously knows the game, but he had Brent Venables, probably the best defensive coordinator in college football. And then he had Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott combined at offensive coordinator, and they were the same for like 10 damn years. Oh, not 10, but about 5-6 years. So it might as well be 10 at the college level. Yeah. All of them are gone now. Tony Elliott coaches in Virginia. Jeff Scott, I think he just was fired at USF. Brent Venables obviously went to Oklahoma last year. And all of a sudden, has Clemson been Clemson the past 2 years?
Not the same, no.
And people are pointing at quarterbacks. They're pointing at this and that and play. No, look at the sideline. Yeah, look at the sideline. It's different now. That continuity has been shot. So, like, I just wrote about this today when talking about the offensive line. That like this franchise has not exactly been the pinnacle of stability over the past 5 years. And this offseason, while like a bulk of the staff remain in place, players remain in place, all of that. Don't get me wrong. But offensive line specifically has been like the center point, the nucleus of that instability. And that has not necessarily changed. They just fired and hired a new offensive line coach. That is going to be 6 in 5 years. It's 6 in 5 years. They haven't had a guy go back to back since I think 2015. I only started looking 5 years ago. It might be worse going beyond before 2019 season, the 2018-19 season. And we think we've got that starting 5. Like we think we know what their starting 5 is going to be, but with the addition of Isaiah Wynn, with Cedric Ogbuehi, with Dan Feeney, like there's a number of combinations that could exist there. So like there's still a little bit of instability going on there, but I'm very interested in seeing how that carryover, how they improve with that carryover, how they improve despite the lack of continuity that we've seen from them in other positions and at other, coaching positions.
John Padilla is asking a question. I think we can get you an answer here. It says, Big O, can you ask Marcel what role does Emmanuel Ogbah have with Chubb and Phillips starting at D end? Chubb actually starts at linebacker, my man. If I'm correct, Ogbah will be on the D line with Wilkins and Sealer in that rotation, right? That's kind of what it is. Raekwon in the middle, and then those 2 guys at end, and then Ogbah will rotate with those guys. Chubb and Phillips are the outside linebackers, right?
Oddly enough, Ogbah is the only player listed at defensive end on this roster over the past couple of years. Everybody else is either a linebacker or DL, or D tackle. He's going to be on the line. This is the time where we get to see that, though. In OTAs, this is where that kind of begins. Where if he's going to be, if he's going to be standing up, if he's going to be playing more outside linebacker rather than that, like, opposite of Sealer or Wilkins, I think this is where they would work him in at. But he's played with his hand in the dirt primarily over the past couple of years. He's been effective doing so. Obviously, I think this pass rush now centers around Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. A lot of money, a lot of draft pick draft capital invested in that, but they also are paying Emmanuel Ogbah $16 million a year. So he's not going to be nothing. He's not going to not have a role. He's not going to not be a critical component of this defense. If shoot, man,
At least for one more year.
at least for one more year. Shoot, if anything,
I don't think he's here after. I don't think he's here after this year. I don't think he fits the system. It's just they can't take the cap hit, so that's why they're not. That's why it's
starting to get phone calls now. That's crazy, but it's always when you're doing something, right? Let me go ahead and make sure that this is off. But like I said, we're gonna see it. We've said the whole too many cooks in the kitchen philosophy before. That exists more on offense, where you got to share a ball. If you can have 11 guys that can rush the passer on defense, I don't think it's a big issue, man. Like, I think that you take it. You can't have too many qualified pass rushers on the field at once. Like, there's no such thing. It's the biggest kitchen in the world, if you will. There's plenty of burners for everybody to have a station. But I'm interested in seeing if they keep his hand in the dirt or if they want to stand him up a little bit more this year. Vic Fangio, creative defensive mind. I'm sure he will find a way to use, again, this $16 million player.
When we had you out on Monday, we already had the news with Wynn, but then the next day, the Ogbah or whatever, or the other Big O, no, because there's only one Big O here in town, but we'll go with the other Big O there. Your thoughts on the additions of those two, and what do you see? What role do you see in Wynn?
Well, Wynn, I think, immediately challenges Austin Jackson at right tackle. Like we've obviously heard Chris Grier say that Austin Jackson is expected to start at right tackle, but that was before they signed Isaiah Wynn. So I think, like, at the very least, that's a competition to pay attention to all summer, or the way he works his way into that as well. Although I think Wynn is a better option than Ogbah. But where I think Wynn's and Ogbah's, where I think they really provide value here, and it's going under the radar, is Teron Armstead has missed time. He's missed at least 3 games in 9 of his 10 NFL seasons. He's probably going to miss time again. Like, if his own career is any indication, he will probably miss time this year. Wynn and Ogbah are qualified left tackles. Like, they are decent options there at left tackle should he go down, so that you're not having to pluck guys off the street and immediately slot them in on the line. Like, I think they provide a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility, and quality depth. That's what everybody likes, right? Is quality depth, not just guys. You want guys who can play, and I think they are both guys who can play. I think, like, depth, from a depth perspective, this offensive line is so much more improved than it was last year, and obviously the year before that. I think that Chris Grier has done a good job this spring of learning his lessons from last year. 2 areas that really did them in over the past couple of years was their depth at defensive back and their depth at offensive line. So, like, Dolphins fans, you haven't seen the big splashy signings outside of Armstead and Williams, but you have seen these depth acquisitions. It's the least sexy position in football, and depth is the least sexy of the least sexy positions. So, like, obviously it's not something you're going to do backflips over. It's not something that you're going to love and applaud, like, on the surface. But when guys start getting banged up middle of the year and you can slot in starting quality depth, all of a sudden you kind of see the vision.
I'm with you. Do you expect Wynn also to get guard play? Because I think he's going to get some play at guard also for depth purposes.
It's been a while since he's played guard. Similar system, though, to the one he ran at Georgia 5 years ago, so we'll have to see. But I think it's too early to really say he'll play guard. I think that's why they signed a guy like Dan Feeney.
Yeah, and by the way, you just mentioned something that's very important with Wynn. I think he's still young, dude. Whereas the other Big O, he's been in the league several years, been on like 87 teams. There's only 32, but somehow or another he's been on 87 teams in just a few years, and he's up there in years now. He's got like 8 or 9 years easily in the league already, so he's a little bit more on the more of the journeyman side. Whereas Wynn is a guy that, while he's had his injury history, and Poop did make a good point, he has an on and off year. And so last year was his off year with the injury. Supposedly, this is his on year, the year he doesn't have a lot of injuries. So we'll see. But the other thing is, there is a little hope for Wynn because he is talented, and the injuries are the thing that have kind of set him back. And he's still young. So this is a guy that still could have his best football ahead of him. So there's that chance with Isaiah Wynn, I think.
Yeah, he's a vet. He's technically a vet because he's been around 5 years.
Yeah,
but he is not a set in his way. Like his career is far from decided, especially at offensive line. Like the guy's got plenty of time ahead of him. I'm very interested in seeing how this coaching staff develops offensive line because that's what they've kind of hedged their bet on over the past couple of years. It's why we haven't seen total overhaul. Is they believe in themselves, like they believe in their ability to develop their guys. So I want to see it. This is the opportunity. This is their shining moment, man. This is their big stage to, kind of put their money where their mouth is.
Amen. I'm with you there. All right. What do you got going on ESPN so folks can check you out, my friend?
So I just filed it today, talking offensive line depth, kind of hitting on the points that we mentioned during this hit. I don't think that it's as dire a position or dire of a need. I don't think it's as critical of a hole as it's been made out to be sometimes. Like, I don't think they're in danger here. I think they have plenty of talent, second level talent. I think that, when healthy, their starting five, it's not, I don't think it's the best in the AFC East, but it's better than the Jets and the Bills. Like, this is not a division blessed with offensive line play. I think they're doing okay.
Exactly. They're not as bad as people make it out to be.
No.
I say a couple things. Was the quarterback running for his life? No. Did the running backs average over 4.5 yards a carry? Yeah. Did the head coach admit that he should have run the ball more? Yeah. So, and those people that coach line, they're not giving up on Eichenberg and Jackson yet. The problem is that we've been jaded because we've watched them for 3 years. And so we're not convinced after 3 years for whatever reasons, inconsistent play, injuries, whatever. We've all been turned off by Eichenberg and Jackson, but they haven't. And they see something that apparently we don't. And then I tell everybody else, didn't they find Shell to fill in and do a serviceable job? Don't they have Robert Jones to do a serviceable job at guard? You have 3 solid linemen. You added 2 guys that did a serviceable job. That's why your line was all right last year. It really wasn't the problem last year. Your bigger problem was your injuries overall. It wasn't really anything else, or Tua making better decisions with the football and getting rid of it and those kind of things. Don't take the unnecessary hits, that kind of stuff. I can't say that the offensive line was the reason why they weren't as good as they could possibly be. That's really not the reality.
Yeah, look, I see in the comments their pass block win rate was 24th last season. I actually did mention that in the story. It was 32nd in 2021. So it is an improvement, but the reason why it's not that they lacked competent offensive line play, it's they were not ever healthy and they lack continuity on the offensive line throughout the season. I think, again, they're banking on the fact that, hey, if our top 5 can play 80%, 75, 80% of snaps,
exactly.
If we can catch a break, this line's going to be fine. And if not, then we've taken steps to have better depth, because who cares how good your top 5 is if one of them gets hurt and your depth is bad. So I think that's why they improved the depth in order to close that drop-off gap a little bit more. I think that's what we're going to see this year.
Follow him on Twitter at Marcel_LJ and catch his work there at ESPN. Have a great weekend, my friend. Enjoy the basketball. Enjoy the hockey, since you got some Eastern Conference action going on. Marcel, you moved down here where Nova Southeastern won the title, made it to their Final Four, but won the title. Then FAU made it to the Final Four. made it to the Final Four. Now the Panthers and the Heat are in their Final Four of their respective sports.
I'm just saying, I'm not ready to take all the credit for it, but it's a coincidence that has to be.
Got to mention it.
To be stated. It has to
mention it. Got to mention it. So now it's your. So if the Dolphins don't make it to the Final Four this year, we do blame you. Then just want you to know.
That's fair.
Okay. All right. Follow him on Twitter at Marcel_LJ and catch his work, of course, here twice a week. And catch my friends at Welt and Rheaume. If you need a lawyers, and a law firm that is going to be behind you in every way, shape, and form, you're dealing with bankruptcy. I know there's some issues right now with folks out there, man. Things are tough. Call Welt and Rheaume. They can help you out. Homeowner property damage, condo damage, criminal defense, business owner claims, commercial litigation, personal injury. They will help you out if you've been dealing with a lot of the storms and water damage and the insurance companies are giving you the runaround. Don't deal with the insurance company. Let the lawyers do it. Trust me, they will bring those insurance companies to their knees like they brought Progressive to their knees for us when we had a bunch of kids go through the wall of our house. 954-966-4646, anywhere in South Florida, anywhere in Florida. One of our listeners in Orlando came down and hired Welt and Rheaume. 954-966-4646.